Nari met Junho at 19. The age when dreams feel like promises and love feels like a destination. It was raining hard outside Yonsei University when she ran under the convenience store canopy, hugging her sketchbook to her chest. Junho was already there, juggling 2 ramen cups and a heavy laptop bag. He looked up startled, then smiled. A small, shy smile that felt like sunlight cutting through clouds. They spoke awkwardly at first, then comfortably, then like 2 people who sensed something familiar in each other. That day, something soft began. Nari and Junho quickly became inseparable. Late-night study sessions, shared convenience store dinners, walks home under city lights. Their love wasn't loud. It was gentle, the kind built in whispers and small moments. Junho made her feel like the future was something they would walk into together. And at 19, she believed futures were guaranteed if the love was strong enough. But life always has its own designs. Nari dreamed of traveling and painting cities she hadn't seen yet. Junho dreamed of joining the country's top tech incubator. Both dreams were valid, but they were not the same dream. When Junho finally got into the incubator, everything changed. Suddenly he wasn't available. Calls got shorter. Text replies took hours. Dates were rescheduled. Anniversaries forgotten. She supported him until the distance became a third person in their relationship. Nari would wait for him in cafes with her sketchbook open. But Junho stopped showing up. Junho began sleeping at the lab 3 nights a week. His hair got messier, his eyes darker, his tone shorter. When Nari visited the lab to surprise him, he barely looked up from his computer screen. "Nari, I'm busy. You can't just show up like this." That sentence cut her deeper than any fight they had ever had. She watched him work, surrounded by glowing monitors and ambition. Everything about him felt like he was already living in a world she wasn't invited into. They still loved each other. But love was no longer enough. One night, after yet another canceled dinner, Nari finally said what she'd been afraid to ask. "Junho, do you still want us?" He didn't look up immediately. He didn't reach for her. He didn't say, "Of course I do." He just sat there in silence. And sometimes silence is the loudest answer. That was the night Nari realized that 2 people can love each other deeply and still not be meant to walk the same path. For weeks after that painful silence, Nari kept trying. She texted him first. She rearranged her schedule. She pretended she didn't notice the coldness in his voice. But love is not meant to be begged for. She would sit at her favorite art studio near Hongdae, painting scenes of the life she wished they still shared. Junho, meanwhile, lived inside a blue-lit labyrinth of data, deadlines, and ambition. Every time she called, he answered with the same rehearsed phrase, "I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back." He never did. And somewhere between "I miss you" and "good night," their relationship shifted from warmth to habit, and from habit to distance. Nari felt it. A woman always feels when love begins slipping away. Junho's startup got its first major investor. Everyone celebrated. Everyone except Nari. She wanted to be happy for him, she truly did. But she also felt like the price of his success was her. At the celebration party, she waited over an hour for him to arrive, watching couples laugh, co-workers toast, strangers cheer. When Junho finally walked in, wearing a suit that didn't belong to the boy she used to know, he didn't look for her first. He greeted others, smiled, took pictures. When he finally reached her, he kissed her forehead, not her lips, like she was a distant memory. "You made it," he said casually, as though she hadn't been standing alone the whole time. She stared at him, realizing that the space between them wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical, visible, heavy. One night, Nari called Junho repeatedly. Her father had collapsed from stress and she needed him, not as a boyfriend, but as the only person who made her feel less alone in the world. He didn't answer. Not once. His phone stayed on silent. Buried somewhere between glowing monitors and ambition, Nari spent the night at the hospital waiting room, head resting on her knees, praying her father would wake up. She thought Junho would eventually notice the missed calls and show up. He didn't. By morning, her father was stable. Her heart wasn't. When she texted Junho about what happened, he responded, "Sorry, I was debugging all night." No apology for not being there. No concern. Not even a "how is he now?" Just code. Just work. Just the future he was choosing over her. Week later, Nari tried to talk to him. "Junho, you're drifting away from me. I feel like I don't exist in your life anymore." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't hold her. He simply said, "Nari, I can't slow down. Not now. I need to focus. You should understand." But she did understand. She understood too well. He wasn't asking for patience. He was asking her to shrink, to fit into the small leftover spaces of his life. She stared at him, searching for the boy she fell in love with. But all she found was a man staring past her, into a future that didn't have room for her dreams. Or for her. Junho wasn't cruel. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't lying. He was simply choosing a life that didn't include her anymore. Sometimes heartbreak comes not from betrayal, but from outgrowing each other. One evening, Nari returned home from her art class and sat alone in her small room. Her canvases leaned against the walls. Brushes sat in jars. Her dreams stared back at her, neglected, dim, fading. She realized something painful but true. She had been watering a love that was no longer growing. Love isn't supposed to feel like waiting for someone to notice you. It isn't supposed to feel like a competition with ambition. Nari didn't stop loving Junho. She just stopped recognizing the person he was becoming. And without meaning to, she whispered into the empty room, "Maybe we want different worlds now." Days passed. Then weeks. Nari waited for Junho to call first. He didn't. She waited for him to ask how her art classes were going. He didn't. She waited for him to show up at her door like he used to, carrying convenience store ramen and a shy smile. He didn't. Love had slowly turned into waiting. And waiting slowly turned into hurting. One evening, while scrolling through their old photos, she realized something. She missed him. But he didn't seem to miss her. And loving someone who has already left emotionally is a specific kind of heartbreak. One that leaves no scars, only silence. Junho texted her unexpectedly. "Can we talk tonight?" Her heart raced. A mix of hope and dread. They met at the small chicken restaurant near campus. Their old spot. The place filled with memories of laughter, exams, and late-night secrets. But as soon as Nari sat down, she knew something was wrong. Junho looked calm. Too calm. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't distant. He was resigned. "Nari, I don't want to hurt you, but I can't give you what you need right now." His voice didn't tremble, but hers did. "What I need is you, Junho." He lowered his eyes. "I'm not the person you fell in love with anymore." His honesty sliced through her chest. He wasn't lying. He wasn't trying to escape blame. He was simply telling the truth she already felt. Sometimes the person you love doesn't become the villain. They simply become someone who no longer fits your life. They walked out into the quiet Seoul night. Street lamps buzzed softly above them. Cars passed slowly. The world felt painfully normal. "Nari," he said gently, "you deserve someone who can show up for you." She swallowed hard. "But I want you." He looked at her with eyes full of regret, not because he didn't love her, but because he couldn't love her the way she needed. "I don't want you to wait for me." There it was. The end. Soft, quiet, and devastating. Nari nodded slowly, even though her heart screamed against it. Love ends in many ways. Sometimes with a fight. Sometimes with betrayal. But sometimes with acceptance. Junho stepped forward and hugged her. Not like a boyfriend. Not like a lover. But like a goodbye. Nari closed her eyes and memorized the warmth, because she knew she would not feel it again. He whispered, "Thank you for loving me." She whispered back, "Take care of yourself." And that was it. No drama. No shouting. No begging. Just two young people whose dreams no longer walked in the same direction. When they pulled apart, something else separated with them, the future they once imagined. Nari turned first. She didn't look back. Not because she didn't love him, but because she knew that if she did, she would run to him again. And she needed to learn how to walk alone. As she walked down the empty street, tears blurred the neon lights around her. The city felt too big. Her chest felt too small. But inside all that pain was a quiet truth. Love can break you. but it can also grow you. She didn't know who she would become after this. But she knew she couldn't become that person if she kept holding on to someone walking a different road. When Nari stepped out of Junho's arms for the last time, her entire world fell silent. No more arguments. No more promises. No more "I'll do better." Just the cold reality of the street outside his apartment. Junho stood in the doorway, eyes red, hands shaking, watching her walk away. He wanted to call her name. He wanted to run after her. He wanted to take everything back. But he didn't, because loving her wasn't the problem. He loved her too much. The problem was his life, the dream he was determined to chase, even if it left no space for her. Nari didn't cry until she turned the corner and knew he couldn't see her. That goodbye hug was warm, but the emptiness that came after it was ice. She whispered to herself, "We chose this, so don't look back." But she did. Once. And saw Junho still standing there frozen. Two hearts breaking at the same time. But neither one strong enough to stop it. A week later, Junho moved to Busan for his directing apprenticeship. Everyone congratulated him. "Wow, Junho, Busan Film Company? That's huge. You're finally living your dream. This is your moment." But every praise felt like a wound. The small apartment he rented looked perfect on the outside. Clean, modern, facing the ocean. But inside, no warmth. No laughter. No Nari humming while cooking ramen. No Junho, "You're working too hard again." Just silence. The first day on set was everything he wanted. Cameras. Scripts. Directors shouting instructions. Lights burning hot. He should have felt alive. Instead, every exciting moment felt incomplete. Every success felt half-earned. During lunch break, he reached for his phone by habit, ready to send Nari a picture of the set. But the screen stared back at him empty. He turned the phone face down and whispered. She wouldn't even care now. But deep inside, he wished she would. Nari threw herself into her fashion work, as if her life depended on it. She started working late. She arrived earlier than everyone. She accepted every project. Her supervisor noticed. "Nari, you're glowing these days," she said. But Nari wasn't glowing. She was burning. Burning to stay busy. Burning so the pain wouldn't catch her. Burning so she wouldn't remember the way Junho hugged her when they said goodbye. Her big break came unexpectedly. A sole designer dropped out of the winter showcase, and Nari was selected to fill the spot. It was the opportunity she used to pray for. She should have screamed. She should have jumped. She should have called Junho. But instead she stood quietly, holding the email with trembling hands. "We're not together anymore," she reminded herself. Then she wiped her tears and got to work. Success was finally within reach. But somehow it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. Weeks passed. Junho's film projects started gaining attention. Nari's designs grew more recognized. Two rising stars. In two different cities. Reaching for the dreams they once planned to chase together. But at night, both broke in the quiet. Nari would stare at her sewing machine, whispering, "Junho, are you eating well?" Junho would stare at the ocean outside his window and murmur, "Nari, can you see me now?" They didn't talk. They didn't check on each other. They didn't follow each other online. But deep inside, both were hurting the same way. They finally achieved what they wanted. Just not with the person they wanted beside them. One particularly cold night, at almost the same hour, both reached their breaking point. Nari sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by fabric and finished dresses. She held one design sketch in her hands, one she created while dreaming of a life with Junho. She pressed it to her chest and finally cried. Not the small tears she'd been holding back, but the deep, shaking sobs that come when you've been pretending too long. Across the country, Junho sat on a bench near Houndy Beach. He watched couples walking hand in hand. He watched the waves crash against rocks. He watched the sky turn darker. And quietly he said, "Nari, I miss you." It was the first time he admitted it out loud. Dreams were coming true for both of them. But happiness wasn't. Because chasing dreams without each other didn't feel like victory. It felt like learning how to breathe with half a heart. It had been almost 6 months since the breakup. 6 months since the goodbye hug that ended everything. 6 months since Nari and Junho pretended they were fine. One evening, as Nari was packing her designs for the winter showcase rehearsal, her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, until something in her chest whispered, "Pick up." She answered. "Hello." A familiar voice breathed out, shaky, almost disbelieving. "Nari." Her heart stopped. "Junho," she whispered. There was silence. A painful, thick silence filled with all the words they never said. "I didn't call to disturb you," Junho finally said, voice low. "I just heard you're one of the featured designers tomorrow, and I wanted to say congratulations. You deserve it." Nari sat slowly on the edge of her bed. He remembered. After all this time, he still remembered. "Thank you," she said softly. "Your film is doing well too. I saw the trailer." "You did?" he asked, voice breaking a little. "Yes." Another silence, but this one felt softer. Not as sharp. Not as painful. They weren't the same people who broke up 6 months ago. They had grown. They had healed, even if imperfectly. Junho cleared his throat. "Nari, do you think we could talk? Properly. No pressure." Nari closed her eyes. She wasn't the girl who needed him to complete her anymore. And he wasn't the boy who was afraid of choosing both love and dreams. "Tomorrow," she said. "After the showcase." He exhaled. The kind of breath someone releases when their heart finally gets permission to hope again. "Tomorrow," he whispered. And for the first time in months, it didn't hurt to hear his voice. Felt right. The next evening, Seoul buzzed with excitement. Bright lights. Photographers. Designers rushing backstage. Models fixing their hair. And in the center of it all, Nari's collection. Her dresses glowed under the runway lights, a perfect mix of elegance and emotion. Every stitch held pain. Every design held a memory. The show began. The audience watched in awe. Her designs flowed across the runway like poetry in motion. Nari stood backstage, palms pressed to her heart. She should have felt proud. She should have felt victorious. But all she felt was the quiet presence behind her. She turned. Junho stood there. Not smiling. Not forcing anything. Just looking at her with eyes full of softness she hadn't seen since the early days of their love. "You look," he paused, voice cracking slightly. "You look like you finally became everything you dreamed of." Nari swallowed hard. So did you. For a moment the world around them, the noise, the lights, the crowd disappeared. It was just the two of them. Older. Stronger. Less afraid. Junho stepped closer. "Nari, I'm not here to ask for what we had before. I'm here because I finally understand something." "What?" she whispered. "That dreams don't matter if you build them alone." Her breath trembled. "And I want you in mine. Not to fix me. Not to fill my broken parts." He paused. "But to walk beside me, if you'll still have me." Nari's eyes filled. "Junho, I never stopped believing in you. I just stopped waiting." He nodded gently. "Then don't wait. Just choose." She looked at him. Not the boy who left, but the man who returned, wiser, steadier, certain. And she chose. She stepped into his arms not like before, but like someone who finally understood her worth. Later that night, they walked out into the cold Seoul air. No grand gestures. No dramatic music. Just quiet footsteps side by side. Comfortable, natural, familiar in a new way. They stopped at a crosswalk, watching snow fall softly toward the street. "Nari," Junho said gently, "can we start again?" She smiled, a small, real smile. "Not from the beginning," she said, "but from here." "Here," he repeated softly, almost like a prayer. "Yes, here where we know who we are. Where we don't lose ourselves for love. Where we don't abandon love for dreams." Junho nodded, finally understanding. Nari slipped her arm through his, and he let out a breath he'd been holding for months. They didn't kiss. They didn't promise forever. They didn't pretend everything was magically healed. They simply chose each other again, this time with wisdom, not fear. And as they walked away together, one truth settled gently between them. Their dreams didn't diverge. They just needed time to grow separately, so they could finally walk the same path again.